Hello, everyone. Excited to be here today to talk about the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Certificate. As you see there, we call it E+I for short. It is one of the more popular, if not the most popular certificate here at Sloan. So a lot to tell you about. Maybe I'll kick it off by a brief introduction of myself, Susan Neal. I am here, the director of the Martin Trust Center. I am also an EIR, which is an entrepreneur in residence here at the Trust Center. I had actually my own company in the San Francisco Bay Area for about 6 or 7 years before moving to Boston and joining MIT. I also teach classes. So I have 3 classes, Start MIT. I have corporate entrepreneurship, which has been renamed to entrepreneurship in organizations. And I also teach happiness here at MIT. Anyways, enough about me. I also have here David Brown, who I will introduce you to at the end of my presentation. I thought it would be great for you to hear from him and his experience. He's the first year here at Sloan. Okay, so to kick us off, there we go. Talking about just briefly the history of the E+I certificate. And actually, you see in that first bullet point, it used to be called the E+I track. It was established back in 2006 by Professor Ed Roberts, who is still around. We see him here even at the Trust Center quite a bit. He started the E+I track back then because he felt like Sloan needed essentially a pathway for students to help them on their entrepreneurial journey. And the idea being really a way to organize classes and activities to help those students get through sort of the entrepreneurial journey from, the first year to the second year, and then ideally maybe onto their new endeavor. The E+I track was renamed E+I certificate just this year, in fact, and some of the requirements were updated. Hadn't really changed much since 2006. So we're hearing some really good things from our students. We tried to streamline it a bit and make it more simple. And so we're excited. We'll have our first cohort graduating this May with the new requirements for the certificate. I have to say, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the E+I certificate is one of the more popular ones. One of the first courses that you start out taking is 15360. It's called the E+I Pro Seminar. This year, we have well over 150 students enrolled in that class. And, we'll talk a little more about that later, but basically that's an introduction to the entrepreneurial ecosystem here at MIT. Okay, so in terms of today, the E+I certificate, I want to give you a bit of an idea of the curricular offerings. And so it involves a number of our more popular classes in entrepreneurship, the first being this 15360 that I just mentioned, which is the Pro Seminar New Enterprises. That's actually 15390. Then there's an entrepreneurial strategy class that you would typically take as part of their certificate. That's 15911. We take many of the students, first-year students actually at Sloan, on a Silicon Valley study tour. We'll talk a little more about that. That's where we all go to California to explore that ecosystem. And then we do a lot around networking and events and programs here at the Martin Trust Center. And so any of you may have heard of the Martin Trust Center here at MIT at Sloan. It really is a physical location, but also a place where students come to get programming, to get mentors, or to come to talk to our EIRs about their entrepreneurial journey. And so as part of the E+I certificate, you are well integrated into the Martin Trust community and all of the things that we're working on. Okay, so why might you consider the E+I certificate? As I mentioned, Ed Roberts, who initially was the one that came up with the idea for it, it really is a ideal way for you to think about your journey. If you are interested in entrepreneurship, there is, I have to say, an overwhelming amount of resources here at MIT and Sloan. And so the purpose of the certificate is to help you guide and navigate through those opportunities. And that includes classes. We have over 60 entrepreneurial classes. We have probably equal amount of co-curriculars or activities that you can participate in as well as part of entrepreneurship. The other reason to think about in terms of the E+I certificate is it's definitely a great way to build relationships. So the students coming in this year, for example, are part of our 2025 cohort. And as you'll probably hear from David, they've already developed very close relationships. They're, you know, all very focused on doing something in the entrepreneurial world, and whether it's starting a business or joining a business. And so having those relationships and those networks, we hear from students, is critical and really important, particularly while they're here and then after leaving, after graduation. I wanted to show you this, what we call our ramp, because I think it, again, in a concise way, sort of shows a typical or possible journey, I should say. As I just said, you know, there are so many opportunities here at MIT, so it's hard for any single person to have, you know, the exact same or course in terms of entrepreneurship. But there are some classes most people take. There are some activities, some clubs that most people do end up involved in. And I'll talk a little more about these, but just so that you can see, there actually is some design to that journey and how you might move through that journey while at Sloan. We talk a lot about the 4 H's. So here at MIT, when we think about entrepreneurship, we do feel like it really does involve 4 aspects. And the first being sort of the heart or the spirit. When we are working with entrepreneurs, we want to see that they have that passion, because we know it's going to take a lot of passion to be successful. As you probably have heard or know yourselves, entrepreneurship can be a lot of up and downs. And so it really does take that drive to be successful. We here at the Martin Trust Center and at Sloan, we do a lot in terms of the knowledge and teaching courses. As I said, over 60, 65 courses on entrepreneurship. And so we make sure we provide you with the training on how to do entrepreneurship. We also put you in situations where you're practicing entrepreneurship. And in many of our courses, there's a hands-on aspect. You're put into project teams and you're presenting and pitching at the end of classes. And then finally, as I mentioned, the community aspect is so critical, both in terms of working on projects while you're here, but certainly as well as you build a new venture and eventually leave Sloan, having that network of folks to go back and ask questions or to help you in your journey, we find is so critical to success. I want to mention 2 people in terms of the E+I certificate. Scott Stern, who has been around for a while here, is very actively involved. He is the faculty director, in fact, of the Martin Trust Center and a professor teaching several of our entrepreneurship courses. Bill Aulett is the managing director of the Martin Trust Center, and he is the Ethernet Inventors Professor of the practice and teaches as well 3 or 4 courses on entrepreneurship. So I've already been referring to the Martin Trust Center as, as I've said, it's a physical location here where students come often to meet with peers, to attend events, or to participate in a program. The other thing I would say about the Martin Trust Center is we have, in terms of the classes that we offer, we have our own methodology. And this is what is likely unique about some of the other entrepreneurship programs you might be looking at. Bill Aulette, who I just mentioned, has written this book, Disciplined Entrepreneurship. It comes with a workbook. It's currently used in probably around 500 universities around the world. The methodology is based on this concept of 24 steps. And it's basically tried and true. It's used with all of our students who are on this entrepreneurial journey. And that book actually is about to come out, an updated version. As well, we have another book coming out that has been written by Paul Cheek on startup tactics. And so in terms of our content, I would say that is where we really are unique and stand out among some of the other institutions that do entrepreneurship. And then actually, I have to mention before I move on here, Orbit. If you have a chance, go visit our Orbit website. It essentially captures almost everything. I hate to say everything because I'm probably wrong, but almost everything regarding entrepreneurship that's going on at MIT. And it is a way for our students to understand what events are going on and how they might participate or meet potential team members or just other mentors here around campus. And then, so in terms of the requirements, I don't want to go into this in too much detail, but to give you an idea, I've mentioned some of the key courses that you would take. We have in addition to the courses, we have 3 programs that are super popular that many of our entrepreneurs take. You see on the left there, one of them is part of a requirement. It's called Start MIT. And it's a course that's offered during the month of January. That's during an IAP program where you'll have the whole month off. And Start MIT is 2.5 weeks where you spend time working, learning, I should say, about entrepreneurship and potentially putting together a team or, coming up with an idea. So it's really for folks early on. We also have 2 other programs, Fuse, which is for teams that are a little further along, have an idea, and want to focus on that effort during the month of January. And then our 3rd program is called Delta V, and that is our accelerator that is offered during the entire summer, so June, July, and August. And it's a pretty amazing program where students receive a stipend and as well $20,000, up to $20,000 to put towards their startup. So, you don't have to be part of the certificate program to participate in those programs that I mentioned, but we see a lot of folks that are coming through with the E+I certificate who take advantage of those activities. Okay, so again, without going through too much detail, to receive the E+I certificate, you do need 45 units. There is a lot to pick from. You saw on the previous page, there are some required courses or activities, but then after that, you can pick firm level courses, product level courses, and then a lot of students do 1 or 2 elective courses. And this will get you to your 45 units. In addition to that, you will need to engage in 2 ecosystem activities. I mentioned at the beginning, the Silicon Valley study tour. We usually get over 100 students who join us in March to take a trip to San Francisco and Silicon Valley. What we do when we get folks there for 2 or 3 days, They're introduced to a number of startups, to investors, to alumni. We really use the time to get them comfortable with sort of that Silicon Valley area and thinking about, in terms of their startup or their opportunities, is that a place they want to be, and a network that they want to develop. There are others, I won't go into them, but other ecosystem activities that you can participate in. And certainly Sandbox, I'll mention only because students love that. It's the opportunity to present an idea and get some money to help get the opportunity off the ground. As well, we have a number of other clubs, student clubs, that you can participate in and get credit for an ecosystem activity. Okay, so that was relatively quick. I do have a QR code up there if folks want to scan that. That will take you to our webpage that outlines much of what I said. And there is an email on that as well. If folks have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, so with that, I would love to engage and have a brief conversation with David Brown, who I've invited to join us today. David is a first-year Sloan student. He is comes to us from the U.S. Army. In fact, he's a graduate of West Point, where he got a bachelor's in chemical engineering. He is certainly interested in entrepreneurship. We see him a lot around the Martin Trust Center, and he even helped with our big accelerator, Delta V, this past summer. Anyways, David, would love to kick us off here with asking you to talk a little bit about your decision, maybe in terms of MIT and entrepreneurship. I know for you, that decision was intertwined, but I'd love to hear what your thought was and how you decided to pursue an MIT entrepreneurship certificate.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Susan, for that kind introduction, and fantastic job with the presentation as always. So for me, the decision, MIT and entrepreneurship, they were intertwined. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that I wanted to have a positive effect on the world. And to me, I felt the best course of action to do that was to go be an entrepreneur. And with that in mind, there was really only one school that really had entrepreneurship resources and put the importance of entrepreneurship up front, and that was MIT Sloan. And just coming to all events like this one, and seeing the opportunities, the networking opportunities, meeting all the people, it was really a no-brainer for me.
Awesome. Well, and the fact now that you've been here the first 6 months, maybe talk a little bit about how you have engaged in entrepreneurship, and is it meeting your expectations?
Yes, it is. It is blowing my expectations out of the water. Absolutely. And so one of the things that I find the most impressive about it is that people come in and people are interested in entrepreneurship, but they're kind of afraid because they don't know how to get engaged. Because they say, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur," and someone will say, "Well, what's your idea?" And maybe they don't have an idea yet, but they know that they want to engage and start their own business. At MIT, it is very welcoming in that sense. You can do things like the entrepreneurship certificate, where it doesn't matter if you don't have an idea. You've got that entrepreneurship energy, the entrepreneurship spirit, and you can meet other people who have the same spirit. Maybe they have an idea, and you meet a future co-founder. You realize there's a connection. They're working on something that you realize you care about, and then boom, you're off and running. And you've got the resources here through the Martin Trust Center, through some of the programs that Susan mentioned. You say, well, I want to get started with this. How? There are the people here who you can talk to, easily accessible, who will walk you through, like, hey, maybe next step you should do this, or maybe you should get Sandbox funding and see where to go from there. And they really lay it out in such an easy way it just makes it a really great program.
Great. Melissa, do you think we should open it up for student questions?
Absolutely. So, um, some of the questions, so we've gotten a few questions about the sandbox, if you want to provide a few more details about the sandbox innovation program.
Sure. So Sandbox is an organization here at MIT that, as I said, provides funding for some of our startups. So essentially, what you need to do is put together a proposal. It is not too laborious. It's pretty straightforward, and you submit that and ask for money. It's done in stages. So you ask for some initial money up front to get your company or your idea off the ground. I can say it's usually somewhere around $500 to $1,000 that most students get. And what they also do is pair you with mentors. And so you're, in addition to getting the money, you're getting a mentor who will help you think through maybe some of your paths forward and help you with decisions, perhaps, about, is this a good idea? So after that first step, I know it goes on. You can raise another 5,000, I believe, up to 25,000 is possible. Now, I don't know all the hurdles you have to go through to get that, but certainly students take advantage of the money that's available and apply for a lot of those funds.
Great. Another question that we received a few times. Sloan Fellows are also welcome to participate in the certificate. Is that right?
Correct. They are.
And then once somebody is a Sloan student and is interested in participating in the certificate, what is the application process like, or is it pretty straightforward to apply to be part of the certificate?
It is pretty straightforward. Essentially, all you need to do is sign up. Well, give us your name and sign up for that first class. I refer to it the 15360. Most students start out there. This year, we're introducing, as I said, new requirements. So while most start with that class, you don't have to, but so long as we have your name on the list, we will track your progress. And like I said, help you in terms of determining your own path.
Awesome. Are there any prerequisite courses that you would suggest to, a future Sloaney who might be interested in E&I take, before they are a student?
Nope. We have a real mix. We get some students who have been doing some entrepreneurship work, but I would say the majority haven't. So you really, you don't need any preparation. We'll take care of that. So yeah, no prerequisites.
And does the E&I certificate focus on certain industries, or is it a broader range?
It is a broader range. So I didn't take you through all of the courses that are offered, but certainly if you go to our page on our website, you can click on what I think we call it the audit, the E&I certificate audit, and that will show you the courses. So that'll give you an idea. So there's certainly some up front that we do require you to take. There's a mix of those. I think there's 3 or 4 you'll see. But then after that, depending on what industry you want, you're interested in, or also it's organized by function. So we do have folks who want to be not so much start a company, but maybe they want to be on the VC or private equity side of entrepreneurship. And so we certainly have courses that you can take if that's the route you want to go. And as I said, I teach corporate entrepreneurship. So if you're the type that wants to do corporate, but still in an entrepreneurial way and think about innovation within a large organization, we offer courses for that. So lots of flexibility, lots of options.
Awesome. David, can you speak to some of the things that you've been exposed to or learned so far in your first semester while taking the E&I certificate?
Yes, absolutely. So the Pro Seminar class is an incredible class. I spoke about the networking earlier. But you also get access to all kinds of speakers, people who have, launched 3 or 4 companies out of MIT or, just in the local Cambridge, Boston ecosystem. There are also some student entrepreneurs, Delta V graduates, who will come and they'll give you a brief pitch on what they do, and then they'll sit around and talk. And that's just kind of the kind of access you don't really get anywhere else.
Great. And can you participate in more than 2 ecosystem activities when you're participating in the certificate?
Yes, you absolutely can. And while the requirement for the certificate is 2 ecosystem activities, I would say most do many more than that, just because there is so many opportunities and folks really do like to get involved. So yes.
Awesome. And I know, Sloan is, of course, part of MIT's ecosystem, but how in particular is the E+I certificate really integrated into like the broader MIT community?
Good question. So yes, it is fairly integrated in the sense that not every class, but I would say a lot of the classes, certainly all of our programs, all of our events are all integrated with the broader MIT community. And we've just learned over all of these years of running entrepreneurship here at MIT that that's where the real benefit a lot of times comes from, is that cross-campus networking and project or team development. And so we do a lot to really encourage that, sort of cross-campus community.
Awesome. And then one more question just to touch upon Delta V one more time, if you don't mind.
Touch upon Delta V. So I'm a little biased, but a great accelerator. So here at MIT, we offer, as I said, Delta V. It's full-time for 3 months, June, July, and August. The students work here at the Martin Trust Center. We basically shut down the Martin Trust Center and it becomes their home, essentially. And I have to say, they first have to apply. So you have to have a team and an idea. You apply and we'll find out in the spring if you're in. Once you join us, there's some requirements in terms of meetings or workshops that you need to go through, but a lot of it is you working on your startup with us EIRs and mentors helping you along the way. Because we are asking the students to commit full-time, that's why we pay them a stipend to help defray some of food and rental costs. And then, as I said, over the course of the 3 months, you can earn up to $20,000 to put towards getting your idea off the ground. And, another big benefit, and we do not, unlike some programs or accelerators, we do not take a piece of your company. This is all just free for you to help you be successful. And we don't ask for a piece of this. We have no skin in the game, so to speak. So we're not influenced to drive you in one direction or another. So what else can I say? Actually, I would say one other benefit that always stands out to me in terms of the Delta V is we put together we call it a mock board, but essentially 8 to 10 folks who are personally chosen for your company, your team, depending on what industry or what function you're pursuing. And those folks meet with you at least 3 times during the summer. And I have to say a lot more than that, probably closer to a dozen times, to help you think through your idea and get it off the ground. And a lot of times, these are pretty influential people. They've been through MIT, a lot of them are alums, but they've been successful. And so they've learned a lot along the way and they're anxious to give back. So another great perk of the Delta V program.
Great, thank you. And so if somebody wanted to pursue entrepreneurial ventures outside of the United States, does the certificate support students who might be looking to do something international?
Absolutely. And we have a lot of students in that situation. So Again, in terms of the certificate, while there are some basic requirements that we ask you to do up front, then once you get into the, they call the product or firm level classes and the electives, you have the opportunity to look at, sort of global opportunities. And as well, one of the things we offer here at MIT are what we call labs. And that's where students have the opportunity to go and either pursue their own idea or join a startup in another country that might be along the lines of something they want to do, or they just feel like they could learn from. And so that's also offered here at MIT. We call those, I think there's a global lab, an E-lab, a China lab. So we do encourage students to move beyond the US borders and to explore entrepreneurship elsewhere.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I think we've covered a lot of different questions about the E+I certificate. So with that, I want to thank you, Susan. Thank you, David, so much for being here and sharing some information, and as well as your personal stories. I'm going to put our email in the chat if anybody has questions as they're thinking about their application or whatnot. But again, David and Susan, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.